Humanianity, a new religious call. Humanity, religion for us all. Humanity, now we all can see. Humanity, how much better we can be.
Hi, I'm Bill Van Fleet, and this is Humanianity Conversation number 91, recorded on December 26th, 2020. It is the 47th recorded conversation with my friend Mike. We continued to work on our different concepts of belief and related words. Some difference has to do with whether belief consists only of states that one is aware of. Also questioned was whether common word usage has any place in the discussion. We're finding it profitable to us to examine these disagreements and the rationales for them. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Bill.
Hi.
Um, all right. So we were supposed to be talking about, uh, we are anticipating talking about belief. And at the end of our last discussion, we had made the realization that how we are using the word belief is very, very different. And
Uh-huh.
it's preventing us from coming to agreement, what we understood belief to be.
Mhm.
And in thinking about it this week, I think I can say pretty confidently that when it comes to the statement, when it comes to the word believe, I believe, I think we pretty much agree on what that means. It's a statement that reflects the degree of confidence you have in something. Is that fair? Would you agree with that?
No,
Okay.
no,
Then
I consider uh, that there is such a thing as belief, and then at right angles to that is the degree of confidence in that belief. So the
okay.
belief can be weak, the belief can be strong.
Okay. So when you say I believe, what you said it's at right angles to belief. What does that mean?
That's a metaphor,
What
meaning
is it a metaphor? Yeah. Of
meaning that it is something else to say um, about the word. So um, again, well, uh, the our our word usage is only a very approximate kind of thing that starts out very ambiguously in infancy and small childhood. And um, our words have all sorts of different meanings in different contexts and so forth. And then uh, the thing that we humans have been able to accomplish is to develop technical language where the words are very specifically, um, precisely defined so that a mistake cannot be made in communication and therefore also in action. So the opposite of technical would, in my mind, be poetic. And so the development of our language from the very beginning is poetic. And the word believe and belief, uh, is a word or are words that are used all the time by people. and they don't have any difficulty using them, but different contexts result in different meanings. And you and I have talked about this before, like um, the person that we know who um, uh, claims not to have any beliefs at all. He calls them suspicions. And it's because for him, the word belief is toxic. And for many people, it is either toxic or problematic because people tend to equate the word belief with uh, a religious belief, which by which they mean actually a belief in a God and related matters, um, but not necessarily, and it's different for different people and so forth. But so the word then is somewhat problematic. But the way that I'm using it is the way I use it in book one, in the chapter on determinants of behavior. And I try to be as technical or precise as possible. And of course, any effort to do something along those lines is complicated by the mind body problem, um, about which I wrote book two. But this was book one, where I attempted to, within it, um, as part of the book, uh, clarify the determinants of behavior. And it's primarily beliefs and motivational states. But those words have precise meanings there that would not necessarily be used by everybody. But we've used the example of when you're driving and you're, without you even thinking about it, uh, you move the steering wheel slightly in one direction or another. And that is based upon the programming that you have acquired by virtue of driving cars and maybe um, toy cars, in childhood and so forth. And so that belief is not something that, for instance, is modeled by language, by words, but it can be done so. So you would say, well, I turn the wheel in this direction because I believe we would turn the car in that direction.
You cut
So,
out. I have bad internet connection. Bill?
yeah.
So I heard everything. It's not necessarily true that it's an accurate model of what the belief is. That was, and then I heard the word language and bang, and that was it. It got cut off.
Okay, well, I was saying, I'm not sure exactly what point you're talking about, but yes, we can put uh, our beliefs into words, but we have many beliefs uh, that are having an influence on our behavior, um, without our being aware of it. And I use uh, the example of when you're driving and you turn the steering wheel slightly this way and that. Uh, you're doing that because you have the belief that if you turn the steering wheel in the counterclockwise direction, the car will turn left. But it's not anything that you are consciously aware of. You're thinking about what you're going to do when you get home. And so it's an automatic process. But on the other hand, it can be further modeled by words. It can be put in sentences like I did. If I turn the steering wheel counterclockwise, the car will turn to the left. That is a belief that you have. So, and a belief can be active or inactive. Your belief about what you did yesterday was totally inactive until I mentioned something about it. So now, though that's at one end of the continuum of belief, which you had some concern about last time. The a lot of our beliefs are actually not acquired from just what happens to us, but what other people tell us, or what we, with our imagination, come up with. And so the opposite end is a belief in God and what that God thinks about us, et cetera, if that's a belief that a person has. So you were thinking that, well, there is such a great difference between the automatic movement of the steering wheel and these beliefs about the nature of God that they shouldn't be considered the same thing. But I say that they are the same thing, except the belief is manifested in different ways and is a little bit different in nature. Um, but um, there's no discontinuity in the continuum uh, of those beliefs. So you wouldn't be able to find a line and say, on one side is one kind of thing that you might call belief, and the other side is another kind of thing and there's no overlap. You won't find any such line.
Yeah, I still have some of the same concerns. Just to comment on what you said just now, some concerns about a few of the things, but I think there is a line. And if I was to remember, if I'm remembering accurately, what I was talking about last week is that I tentatively agree with the idea that both of those things are types of beliefs on some kind of continuum. And I use a kind of idea, you're creating a a master set of things that can contain both these events: turning of the wheel, it's going to go left, and my belief in God, and calling them both beliefs. With regards to that dividing line, yeah, I mean, I do think there is a dividing line. I think the dividing line is the ability, and I think we have to go into exactly what this means. One dividing line I think there is the ability to. What I was going to first say is the ability to doubt, but you could doubt both those things. I think it's a function of the dividing line might be is where or how the belief gets formed. And it's I think it's very, very different. And so that's one dividing line. But another dividing line is, again, our the way we experience those two things. I think, is so different that to call them both beliefs, okay, we can call them both beliefs, but to then wrap them up in arguments um, that we might make about beliefs and what they mean and what the implications of having a belief is inappropriate because they are so different. There's an implication to um, a belief that you turn the wheel and the car's going to go left. If you start talking about in detail what we mean about beliefs, we can, there are a whole bunch of implications to that, to understanding that activity as a belief. Similarly, if you think about somebody believing in God and what that means, there's a whole bunch of um, conclusions and that you could make about that situation as well, and they are so completely different. The experience of those two things are so different. I think it's inappropriate to it might be appropriate to call them beliefs, but it's completely inappropriate to reason make any kind of argument or have any kind of course of reasoning that somehow equates those two things. And that's my main concern. So I do think there are dividing lines. I think there's
Okay.
three.
So
One, go ahead.
yeah, you've made assertions that there's a dividing line, et cetera, but you've not shown me an example.
Well, I think there's a couple of well, I guess what do we mean by dividing lines? So I think there's a couple of I think there are a couple of dividing lines. One is how the belief was formed is an
That,
important dividing line.
of course, our beliefs are formed in all sorts of ways. Well, okay, the main way of forming our beliefs, the main two ways are reflected in the mind-body problem book as the subjective model and the objective model. And indeed, the reason for that, those two models, is that they are so extremely different. The subjective model is your beliefs on the basis of your everyday experience. And so you walk into the living room because you know that's where you left your cell phone. You believe that's where you left your cell phone. And um, and you look at the wall and know that it's pretty solid, but you in the objective model, uh, where humans have talked with each other, used their imagination, and so forth, the wall is mostly, quote, empty space and does not consist of a solid, impenetrable uh, area. But it gets into all the stuff about quantum mechanics and everything, where it turns out that um, when we try to take a look at the things that science has come up with as far as the basic nature of reality is concerned, or the basic nature of the what exists, the matter and energy and so forth, um, that it doesn't resemble anything that we have in our daily experience, which is all we can use for our models. And so for our imaginative models. So uh, it turns out that the models eventually become just mathematical equations, and they have words associated with them like wave function and stuff like that, that are reminiscent of uh, uh, things in our subjective experience. But uh, if you try to actually consider those things to be like what you imagine, you will be incorrect. So, um, so there is that difference between the subjective and objective models of reality, so to speak. But if we take beliefs, we can say that beliefs can be inactive, not manifesting themselves in any particular way at the moment, but later can become active. Like the rat learns where food is in the maze, but that belief becomes inactive when it's back in its cage, and then it becomes active again when the rat is put in the maze. So it's whether it's active or inactive. Then another is whether it is conscious or not. And I gave the example of the turning of the steering wheel that's happening outside of any conscious awareness, or pretty much so. Certainly, one is not thinking about it. One is thinking about other stuff, um, and or you may be turning the wheel while you're watching actually other cars do certain things and so on. Okay, and then so it can be conscious or unconscious. Then there's the whether it is ever put into words, linguistically modeled in the form of sentences. And so some beliefs are never put into words, others are. And then when people put them into words, that can stimulate imagination and the creation of other beliefs that a person would not have. And uh, so there so the main thing is that one's brain or mind has been changed by experience from what it had been, let's say, prior to birth, or uh, prior to some stage in fetal development or whatever, um, that that the brain is now a particular way because it was exposed to certain experience, certain experience, let's say.
Yeah.
So, those and those categories in quotes that I talked about are continua. In other words, a belief can be partially active or strongly active or inactive. Uh, a belief can be um, uh, very conscious, um, or it can be totally outside of conscious awareness, or anywhere in between. One can be somewhat aware, and it can be put into words to some extent or to a great extent. And then there's the question of the strength of the belief, and that is it may be just a slight tendency to expect certain things, and or it can be a feeling of close to certainty, or um, a substantial amount of doubt, and so on.
Okay.
All of those things are continua, but they all apply to this thing, belief.
I think that I'm concerned about the your use of reasoning in coming to these conclusions. what I hear in how you're reasoning is a definition you're assuming is true, and then trying to have this very, very complex set of reasoning and different instances of what your definition is to try to make your definition fit. And so, for example, there's conscious beliefs, unconscious beliefs. So there might be beliefs that you can question and other you not. They're just, as you were talking about it, what I'm hearing is that it sounds like what you're doing is saying, this is what I think a belief is, X. And I'm going to work backwards from that idea to try to make try to come up with different different attributes of that belief to fit my original idea, my assumption of what a belief is. So my claim is that when you have so many different instances of a thing, I think that's a warning sign to tell you that, well, maybe you're trying to kind of, in a sense, force a preconceived notion of what, in this case, a belief is inappropriately. If you have something you're claiming is something, and then you have to have 4 or 5 or 6 different types of instances of it, and those instances seem so, from an experiential point of view, so completely different from each other. I think it's reasonable to say maybe what I'm trying to do is, well, I think what it's appropriate to say maybe my original assumption of what a belief was wrong, because I need so many different instances of it, and those instances are defined so differently from each other from an experiential point of view. I think that is a reasonable concern. That's fundamentally what I think you're doing. That's what's not. It comes back down to that idea that believing in God and believing that the world turns left and you'll go left are so palpably different. It's a warning sign, I think, with regards to how you're reasoning about this, to claim that they're both beliefs.
Well, you're using the word reasoning as if you believe that what I'm trying to do is to demonstrate the truth of something that I am saying as following some uh, uh, as resulting from the use of some rules of logic and so forth. That's not what I'm doing.
Okay.
I'm not trying to demonstrate the existence of beliefs. All I'm saying is that what we're talking about is something that happens with animals or any that have a programmable nervous system that that allow the organism to adapt to its environment, to learn about its environment. Now, I'm not. This is not the result of um, of something that one might call reasoning. It's more just a presentation of a way of using words and a way of understanding that is very helpful. And so to me, there's no problem at all. Again, I think that you're going back to trying to make it that I have demonstrated that what I have said is so by reasoning, by use of rules of logic and rules of evidence, something like that, and that's not so.
So then what is the conclusion then of your presentation? I thought the conclusion is I thought that your presentation was, I believe that beliefs are this, and here's a course of reasoning for me to explain why I believe that. It sounds like that's not, you believe that's not what you're doing. So my question is then, what are you doing?
I was trying to demonstrate to you that the concept of belief is a useful one, and that it is used in many different ways by different people, but it's referring to the programmability of the nervous system in response to experience. Um, the mind or the brain learns about what exists and how it works and so forth.
Okay. So then my concern there, I think, still stands, because it still seems like what you're doing is, for lack of a better word, and this might be going too far, is choosing an arbitrary definition of what beliefs are, which you happen to believe they are, and then making a further set of assumptions about the way what other people would think about that opinion. And then I still think using a course of reasoning, for example, going into detail, which we've done in the past, about how beliefs are formed, and that it's a change in the nervous system between different points of times. That's a very sophisticated course of reasoning there that is being used to substantiate the axiomatic definition of belief you're choosing. And you're also, I think, when there's objections made to that course of reasoning, which I've made in the past, about the palpable difference in experience between a statement of believing in God and the unconscious belief that you're postulating, that when I turn the wheel left, it goes left. You have a course of reasoning to answer those objections, for lack of a better word, those concerns, that still are all acting to support this axiomatic definition of belief. And look, everybody has to have some kind of arbitrary, I mean, I have no idea what a belief really is, just what I think. But my concern is, again, I think if you have to have, if your definition of belief requires and points to and naturally leads to very different instances of a belief that are so different from each other, I think it's a warning sign that what you are originally considering to be a belief may not be accurate.
Okay, but see, all I'm doing is saying this is the way the word is used by everybody. And nobody is going to have any trouble saying if I say, when I put the rat in the maze, the rat believes that food is to the right. That's why it turns to the right. much more frequently than the left.
I do.
Nobody is going to fail to understand what I mean by the rat believes that, and so forth.
Oh, sure.
In the same way that nobody is going to have any difficulty with my saying that this person believes in the existence of a God.
Okay, that's where I really have concerns. I don't think, yeah, I mean, I don't think, I mean, people can use their imagination. They could do lots of things to kind of read in between the lines and guess what you mean when you say, what's happening with the rat? Does the rat believe? Okay, so, but that's, for example, let's say we don't prime, so to speak, the person by saying, what is the rat believing that the food is to the left? What do you think, person? What if we just put the rat in the maze and we let the person say what they think is going on? I think that'd be a better test. No, I don't think everybody would say the rat believes the food is to the left. There's a portion of people who would state the rat knows, it's rat instinct. It's got nothing to do with belief. Similarly, people who believe in God.
See, the rat knows.
Huh?
Know, K-N-O-W, is another a synonym for belief. It to a
Not
certain
if
extent, they're to a certain extent. The, when one knows something, one believes something that the vast majority of people believe.
So now what I hear you saying is I think the same course of reasoning. You're saying that the arbitrary definition that you've chosen for belief is what everybody else would have. And now you're saying that the arbitrary definition you're making for the word no is also what everybody else has. That's a big, gigantic statement there. Are you saying, Bill, that on average what the 8 billion other people on this planet, how they use the word believe and know, something that is so abstract a concept? I think that's stretching a big stretch.
I agree that the word no is very problematic because people use it in different ways. Like, for instance, I just know it's going to rain tomorrow, even though the weather report indicates otherwise.
Mhm.
Or I know, uh, I know John. I know him real well. Um, uh, I know my algebra satisfactorily. The word know is used in many different ways. What I was saying at the beginning was, uh, of course, we're dealing with poetry if we're talking about how people use words in general. But if we're talking about specifically a change in the nervous system that is produced by the environment, um, including the internal environment like pain or something, wherever it may come from, yes.
You said if we are considering a change in the nervous system, why should we consider that? Why should we be, or why should you be using that as a baseline for consideration? And that's my point.
Well, we could talk about anything. We're
Exactly.
we're talking. You were the one that brought up the whole issue of belief, and so that's why I'm talking about it.
No. That's not what I mean. What I just pointed out to you is the actual thing that you are um, have an axiomatic belief in, irrespective of what I claim to be evidence, so to speak, in the presentation you're making that I believe is cause to reconsider the axiomatic nature of that definition, a change in the nervous system.
You're using the word axiom. That means that you're thinking in terms of some kind of logical,
Well,
systematic
yeah,
analysis of
okay,
verbalized thought.
a preference you're making. I think what I'm hearing you say is that, maybe I'm wrong, is that everybody, whether they know it or not, when they use the word belief, are referring to a change in their nervous system. Is that is that right?
Um, I'm a little bit worried about that, but to say a change in the nervous system, um, there can be lots of different changes in the nervous system. Person can have a stroke. Um, that's not, that doesn't have to do with belief. Um, it might influence belief. In fact, probably it will. But see,
Yeah.
are you saying, you're saying that that there's something wrong with my way of understanding what the word belief or believe means? What is your alternative?
Well, can have an alternative. I do have an alternative,
Okay.
but just because I have an alternative, or let's say I didn't have let's say I lacked an alternative, it doesn't necessarily mean that simply because there's a lack of an alternative that it's appropriate to believe something. I mean, if you have, in my opinion at least, if you're saying your definition of a belief is X, and that belief, in order for you to substantiate it, for you to kind of show that the reasons why you believe it to be true lead to what seems to be contradictory conclusions, then I think it's reasonable, even without an alternative, for you to question whether or not that original definition of a belief X is accurate.
What's contradictory?
I think that it is. I think there's contradictory is just one criteria for doubting the accuracy of the beliefs. Another set of criteria.
No, I mean, you're saying that there's a
Yeah, well, I think in a sense it's contradictory. I think it's contradictory to say. I think that it's contradictory to make the claim that, in a sense, so I said in a sense contradictory. There's other criteria for doubt, which I think might be more clear, but in the sense it's contradictory. I think that it's contradictory to state that. I said it again. To in order for you to explain the differences in experience between turning the wheel left and a belief in God, it seems like you have to make a very, maybe complicated is the wrong word. It seems like you have to introduce imaginary concepts in order to explain that. And things like, well, now, first you're saying, for example, a belief is a change in the nervous system between 2 points. So, but then now, because of these complex contradictions, now you have to say, well, these changes can be conscious or unconscious. Well, so what does that mean? It's just saying it's a change in the nervous system, and that change should be conscious or unconscious. So
yes.
so you're saying one is actually a change in the nervous system. Then you're talking about what the experience of that change is, and you're both equating them to be types of beliefs. It's just the point I'm trying to make. It reminds me of this principle in physics. I don't remember. It's in the movie Contact. Like, when you have a theory or an idea of the way things are, and it requires this really complex, what I would consider to be exceptions and explanations. You have to explain this, then there's what about this and what about that. I think it points to the idea that what your original assumption about what the definition was, X, is problematic.
Well, so far, all you've said is it's problematic. It's well, you said it's self-contradictory, but that's only because I say their beliefs manifest themselves in various ways. But you haven't said that and all I'm trying to do is use the word belief or believe in the way that everybody else uses it, as much as possible, even though it is used in all sorts of different ways, including the person who says he doesn't have any beliefs and so forth. So that certainly, give me a chance here.
Go ahead.
Certainly, there are people that are going to disagree, and they'll say, I don't have any beliefs because I'm not stupid or something like that. That of course, there are going to be differences, but let's do something else.
Mm-hmm.
The turning of the steering wheel automatically, because of your belief that it will turn the car, is not all that different from your nodding to a person because you've observed that seems to work, or that that you know that you should not mention such and such because the person will react negatively. It is not all that different from your belief as to what is going through the mind of that person, and your belief that that person is thinking about you in a certain way. And also that you can have the belief that there's somebody whom you have not met but have only heard of, and has heard of you, and you believe that they have such and such belief about you, and that there are entities in the world that you can't see that are thinking about you and believing things about you, that there is one big entity of that sort living in the sky, or
I got it. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
So let me take this head on then, instead of, okay, so I would like you to then please explain to me why you believe it's appropriate to categorize a belief in God, or a belief, let's even take something wilder than that. Why you think it's appropriate to claim that a belief that Big Bird is real, and my belief and that my computer is real, and I act as if it's real, are the same thing, that they're both beliefs. Why?
Um, Big Bird, I'm not sure that that's a good example, because I think almost anybody would say that they knew that Big Bird was not.
Well, not necessarily. Take a schizophrenic. Somebody
Uh,
believes Big Bird is real. He's seen it on television. It's real. My grandfather used to believe that characters on the TV were real when he had dementia. So,
that's people can believe all sorts of things that the vast majority of people would not. Uh,
I can't hear you.
yeah, I think it was my system went down. I have these interruptions.
Okay. The last thing I heard you said was, of course, everybody can have different beliefs.
Uh, that's not doing it.
Okay.
Can you say a little bit more about what I just said?
Well, I'll go back to, I think you were in the middle of saying it. So I had claimed, I had said that, okay, then I said, let's take this head on then. Please explain why you believe it's appropriate to characterize a belief that Big Bird is real and a belief that the car goes left as the same thing. Both people say those things are beliefs, that's what you're claiming. They're both beliefs. Please explain why it's appropriate to call both of those beliefs. To equate them as let me say that, why it's appropriate to equate those things as they're the same thing.
Because they represent, if we use the natural science model, a particular organization of enhanced synaptic potentials in the brain that are more likely to go off, um, that have to do with one's interaction with the world. The person who believes that Big Bird exists presumably has beliefs about what effect that has
Okay.
on what they might think or do.
Okay. So
There,
let me.
there certainly is the possibility of a person having an inaccurate belief. We understand that, but it has a person can have a belief that a particular situation is dangerous and therefore experience fear.
Okay. So
Uh,
the core, so the core, what I hear to be the core element of your argument is that because both these, what you're characterizing as beliefs, are electrical potentials in the brain, it's appropriate to call them the same thing. So is that what I'm hearing you say?
Not exactly.
Okay.
Uh, but I think long before people knew anything about electrical potentials, they would still agree um, that a person could be changed such that they have a particular reaction to certain actual or potential situations that might arise, that are different, um, that have been acquired by virtue of life experience. Now, there may be
Okay.
there may be things that are very similar that we are born with. In other words, beliefs that are inborn or,
Okay.
quote, instinctual.
Okay, you just made an important switch there. Your original statement had to do with electrical impulses in your brain. And the clarification of that statement had to do with what people experience. Okay, those are two different things.
No, you're not understanding what
Maybe
I'm.
I don't understand that. So please explain further then. So it's not electrical impulses, and not exactly.
No, belief is not electrical impulses. Of course not. I mean, electrical impulses are just electrical impulses.
I mean, electrical impulses in your brain, electrical potentials, synaptic potentials, I think is what the word you use.
But there are all sorts of synaptic potentials in the brain that don't have to do with belief.
Right. So it's not that. So they're not synaptic potential. Again, so go back to the question. Why is it appropriate for you to claim and use the word belief when it comes to somebody stating that they believe that Big Bird is real and somebody turning the wheel and expecting the car to go right? Why are those two things? Why is it appropriate to call both those things beliefs?
Each person would, if you ask the person, well, why do you turn the wheel to the counterclockwise? They'll say, well, because I believe the car will turn left.
No, I disagree. So I think
I
that
don't mean that they will always use those words.
no. I have grave concerns with a course of reasoning that relies on your personal opinion of the way people will respond without you demonstrate. I mean, if you had some kind of evidence for me that would say, I did a study and I know that the majority of people in the world would say that when I turn the wheel left, it's a belief. Okay, but I can't accept that because that seems to be there is no way, in my opinion, an atheist or a theist, a theist would state that, or an atheist or something would state, my beliefs in God or my beliefs in whether Big Bird is real or not are identical to, when I turn the wheel left and it goes left.
Well, identical.
I don't agree that they're
I-
not. People say they're not both beliefs.
Identical houses do not have to be identical in order to be houses.
Well, but no, I'm thinking something more than that. No, I disagree that most people would say that's the same thing. If you're making that claim, that's just an opinion I don't agree with. You're completely omitting the ideas and the word no, which I think people would say when I turn the wheel left, it has nothing to do with the belief that I have. I turn the wheel left because I know when I turn the wheel left, it goes left. Beliefs and knowing are two different things, most people would say, I believe. Oh,
Yeah, it happened again. I don't know whether it's my system or yours. I suspect it might be mine.
okay. Well, I guess the best thing to do is before we forget about what we said is immediately move on to what we were saying before we got disconnected. Do you remember what it was?
No.
Okay. So I was able to refine it a little bit. So basically, I think a integral to your arguments and integral to your beliefs about what beliefs are is a belief that you have that you can have an understanding of the way, and it's, the belief that that you know the way most people will respond and the way most people use words and the way people use words. That seems to be kind of a central tenet, a foundational point of view that you have in making your argument about what beliefs are. Your whole, it seems like your whole definition of belief relies on the idea that you know how most people use the word beliefs.
Well, no, I don't have any statistical knowledge of that. Of course not. Let
Well,
me ask you this just for clarification. Do you believe that when you turn your steering wheel counterclockwise, that it makes your car turn to the left if you're going forward?
when you say believe, do I believe that? Are you asking me in the moment when I'm driving, do I turn? No, that's not a belief. Definitely not.
You don't believe right now that whenever you turn uh, the
Right
steering,
now?
yeah.
Sure. That's a completely different statement you're asking me. If you ask me right now, do you believe that when is different than asking me when you turn the wheel and I'm driving, do I believe? Those are two different, completely different questions, completely.
Do you think that um, when you turn your steering wheel counterclockwise while driving, it's because you have a belief that that will make the car turn to the left?
Again, are you asking me now? Or you said when I? That's different than me being in the car and turning the wheel. No,
I'm,
I don't believe that.
I'm asking, okay, you do have the belief that if you turn your steering wheel counterclockwise, the car will turn left. You do believe that. Is that right?
No, you you're
What do you believe in?
you're asking you're like the best way I can explain it is you're like using this like I know it's not conscious. I don't think it's but you're using this kind of tricky, sneaky point of view to substantiate your ideas of what belief is. If you're asking me when I turn the wheel, so if you're asking me, imagine when you're driving and imagine when you're turning the wheel right now, do you think it's a belief or not that the car will go in the direction the wheel is turned?
No,
That's
no, no, no. I didn't
okay.
say that. I didn't say that.
But let's be
I
clear then. What
just,
exactly are you asking me?
I was asking you, do you believe that when you turn your steering wheel counterclockwise, that your car will turn to the left?
I would not characterize as a belief at all.
Did not ask you that. Okay, so you don't believe that. What do you believe instead?
That I would say if I was forced to choose a word in terms of what that is, that
No,
would be
I'm not
knowing.
asking. I'm
That
asking
would
you what you,
it is not that is
asking
no
you.
Bill, you're not going to put me into that pigeon because it's ridiculous. You're
See,
not going to say to me, I'm asking you a question and you can only use this word to answer. I'm going to use whatever answer I feel is appropriate. That's my point. My point is I'm going to use like every other 8 billion people on the planet. They're going to use a word and an idea that they think is accurate. It's not appropriate for you to pigeonhole them and state, well, is it a belief or not? Yes or no, yes or no, yes or no. I'm rejecting that line of reasoning completely.
yeah, there's something going on here that is, um, I know that, I don't know, but I believe that your basic intention is to find fault with what I am saying, not to present an alternative view that you believe is a better one.
Oh,
Uh,
I could definitely do that, but this is a sticking point I have with some of your reasoning, and I've said it before.
yes, but
I
it's my reasoning. It's not.
Well, it is, yes. Well, I claim your reasoning. You are to state, and this is, I think, the extent of this is why I'm so concerned about it. You're you're confusing a course of reasoning you're making with the way the world actually is. There's very often, and I've mentioned this before. Let me. All right, go ahead. I'd like to finish, but continue. What were we going to say?
Well, I would just like to go back and ask this question. Do you believe that when you turn the steering wheel counterclockwise and the car is moving forward, that it results in the car turning to the left?
Let me.
Do you
I
believe that or
No.
not?
You need to get clear on the question.
Do
Are
you?
you asking me when I'm driving or right now?
I'm saying whether that's a belief you have.
You need to get clear on what that. I don't understand the question.
The question is, do you believe that when the car is moving forward and you turn the steering wheel counterclockwise, that it makes the car turn left? Do you believe that?
I still don't understand the question. You said the same thing. I need to understand what point of view you're asking me to take. Are you asking me in this right now, in this moment, or when I'm driving?
I was asking you in general whether you believe that. I could ask you the same question when you're driving or when the car is still.
No, there'll be two different answers.
Okay, so the car is still right now. So you do believe or don't believe that when you're driving, the car is moving forward, you're turning this.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with whether the car's moving. It has to do with the state that I am in.
Well, I
If I am thinking about what happens, if I am imagining consciously what happens when I turn the wheel left, yes, I'm going to say, I believe that when that happens, the car's going to go left. If you ask me to imagine what's happening to me when I'm driving, listening to the radio and talking to my wife on the phone, if when I turn the wheel left, if I believe the car is going to go left, I'm going to say no. That is not a belief I have in that moment.
why do your arms turn the wheel then?
Because I think there's a difference between knowing and
No,
believing.
why do they do it?
Why do they do what? Well, it could be a whole bunch of reasons why. It could be training. Could be
Training, okay.
it could be training, which I think is different than belief. Which I think is different than belief.
Training,
Firstly, wait, no, let me finish. It could be training. It could be instinct. It could be I'm consciously, while I'm speaking to my wife, saying I want to turn left, and I know if I turn left, I'm gonna go left. Or it could be I want to turn right. I believe if I turn right, I'm going to go right. It could be that. It could be a whole bunch of things. To pigeonhole somebody into
training,
your definition of a belief is completely inappropriate.
training is how you acquire the belief.
No, see, that's where we differ. That's my point. This is my point. I do not adopt um your ideas of what beliefs are, exactly how they are formed, and the multitude of situations that constitute a belief. And that's fundamentally what I am uh, um, fighting against, so to speak. Why I'm so passionate about this.
Yes,
It's,
I can
it's
tell.
different.
Uh, okay, tell me what you belief means.
When I think about beliefs, um, I recognize, well, at least I believe that um, I could only use my first person subjective experience in terms of in trying to understand what that means. I can't use anyone else's. So when I spent this past week understanding what beliefs are, it was very, very difficult for me. I was going into and really being introspective and going through different situations and attempting to kind of put into words what I'm experiencing here when I say I believe something, or when I turn the wheel left and it goes left. I recognize that for me, there's part of both of those experiences, those believing in God and believing that the wheel turns a certain way. I would agree. There's a certain part of that I experience to be identical, but there's so much that's not identical in that experience that for me, it's inappropriate to claim both those things are beliefs. So what I'm doing is I am recognizing the difference between the word believe and the word belief. In the same way, I would recognize the difference between a thought and thinking. I can state somewhat clearly what a thought is. It's much more difficult for me to state what thinking is. In the same way, I can state what I believe in. I can kind of state pretty clearly what that is. What belief is a little bit different and a little harder. At the end of the day, after a long kind of set of days and kind of hours of thinking about it, the conclusion that I come to is that belief is qualia. Like thinking, like motivational states, like feelings, like sensations, like memory. It's the closest thing. It's one of the closest things to what I would consider to be consciousness that I've ever considered. Even going further than that, I went further to try to think about, put even in more detail what I seem to be experiencing when I would say I have belief in something. But maybe I'll get to that in a minute. But so there's two different. Remember I said that beliefs are on a continuum, and we need different kind of definitions of what they are. That's why I'm using two words. I'm using the word believe, the verb, to denote when I say I believe in God. Belief is different than to believe, in the same way thinking is different than a thought. When I say to believe, it is an instance of the qualia of belief, in the same way that the analogy would be when I say I am thinking about my wife. It's an instance, it's a thought that I have, it's an instance of thinking. So I think the most reasonable explanation and definition of a belief that I have, the most reasonable definition of what a belief is for me, is that belief is qualia. And when people talk about this qualia and make statements about it, it reflects an action they're making that we use the word believe. So that's what I think a belief is qualia.
Well, I certainly cannot. It's very difficult to follow you, and then there are certain points where it becomes pretty clear in my mind that I can't agree with you. Qualia are the different individual labelable experiences that you have within your subjective experience, right? And so, for instance, you can itch, and that would be a qualia. You can be thirsty,
Right.
that would be a qualia. To say that a belief that is
I didn't say a belief. I said belief. A belief. What do you mean by a belief? See, I would say a belief.
I
A
can't
belief.
follow
What
you.
is that?
I can't follow you because you have your own terminology and um, you know um,
Well, I'm just asking you. When you say a belief, I
and,
don't. I don't understand. What do you mean by that?
and a certain resistance to you do not want to accept what I think is a very reasonable and simple meaning that is consistent with the way that people use the words. So you have a different,
Definitely not.
but I can't understand your different way.
Let me
Uh,
just. Let me just say this. Yes.
you mean a
Yeah.
belief? A belief is a particular kind of qualia, or do you mean it's qualia in general?
Well,
Like any qualia is a belief.
no. It's not what I mean. I would like to go back and make some commentary about what you just said, but I'll skip that. No. Um, I I am making the point,
Uh-huh.
and this is something you've said in the past. We're slipping in and out of definitions of words when we talk about belief. We say when you have a belief, we use the word when we believe. We use the word just belief. I am claiming those are different things, and I'm attempting to explain what they are through an analogy, primarily with thinking and thought, which is a little bit easier to understand.
Can we agree that it is fairly fairly customary
Right.
um, uh, for people to say, um, I have the belief that da 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 da, and I believe da 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 da.
Yeah.
Okay. So I believe da 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 is the same as having the belief da 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 da.
I would agree. That's those two statements I think are identical,
Okay.
in my opinion.
Okay. Um, because that's word usage. In other words, when I make a statement, the context conveys that this is me expressing my belief that what I'm saying is so.
Mhm.
We,
Now, here's where here's where we break and where we differ.
uh-huh.
Now I'm saying what we just talked about, the belief and I believe, is reflective of when people say things like, when they say, I believe in God, I believe that Big Bird is real or not real, I believe in quantum mechanics. It's reflective of a cognitive process that's going on in their mind. And what I mean by that is it's reflective of an idea that they have um, a that they accept the accuracy of a statement. I believe in God. If when somebody says I believe in God, they're accepting the accuracy of the statement that God exists. A belief, the belief, I believe, that's what that means. Now this is where the dividing line is, I think, between you and I. I'm contrasting that with turning the wheel left and it goes left. I'm saying that is, or I mean, that is, or belief that I'm my computer screen, I'm going to reach out, I'm going to touch it, that I'm looking out here and I'm existing in space. That is not in when I'm experiencing. It is not the belief in my computer. It is not a belief in the existence of space. It is belief. It is an experience that we have that is similar to thinking, that is similar to a motivational state, that is similar to a sensation that we have, that is simply part of our subjective experience. We cannot help but to experience belief. We cannot help but to experience thinking. We cannot help but to experience sensations. It's something that is simply part of our subjective experience. This is a way for me to quantify, and not really quantify is the wrong word. This is a way for me to differentiate between when somebody says, the two situations, a belief in God and turning the wheel left and the expectation for it to go left. This is my attempt to recognize that, yes, in a way, you can say they're both beliefs, but it's also a way for me to highlight how incredibly different those two things are, and it's not appropriate to claim they're the same thing. They're both something you believe in. So that's my presentation for beliefs, a belief, to believe, and the belief in.
Yeah, and I get lost.
Mm.
I don't want to interrupt. I've spoken at great length to present my ideas, and I don't, and I want to give you a chance, but much of the time that you're talking, I can't really follow what you're saying.
Please go like this. It's okay. I'd rather you do that than allow me to continue and not be able to dissect what I'm saying and ask me to substantiate it. Do you want me to start again?
Yeah.
Okay.
What are you going to present?
I am going to present, well, I'm going to build an argument here. So the first thing I'm going to present is the orientation I'm using and the point of view I'm taking to create some kind of way of trying to understand what beliefs are. So I am not going to try to create a definition of beliefs based on what I think most people do or how I think most people use the words belief or to believe or the belief in. I don't feel that's appropriate. And the reason why I don't feel that's appropriate is because there is no way for me to claim, firstly, there's no way for me to know what the other 8 billion people.
I want to make a point here about this issue.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that the definition of belief that I am proposing is one that I am proposing because I believe that most people use the word that way. I believe that most people use the word that way in that they recognize they have no difficulty understanding what I'm referring to, but that's not the reason. What I am basing the idea of belief on, I'm trying to identify something fairly specific, but that is an important thing that happens, namely that nervous systems learn. They develop beliefs that are a varying degree of accuracy about the environment, internal and external, and that that can be observed because of the behavior that results, like the rat turning to the right in the maze, or the person um, having an increase in blood pressure when someone says that God does not exist. So,
Okay. Yeah. So let me clarify why I said that. I didn't say that. I guess I thought of making it clear. I thought it was important to make clear how I was going to go about trying to understand what beliefs were. I mean, for one reason was to contrast it with the point of view I felt you were taking. But I also wanted to include it. Ah, crap, not again. Oh, Bill?
yeah,
Oh, I thought you froze. I was like, oh no, you were just drinking. Okay. Um, so partly it was to contrast it with the point of view you're taking, but I also wanted to communicate it because it was something that I found incredibly difficult to do when I spent a lot of time preparing for our discussion today and spent a lot of time thinking about beliefs. And the first question I had for myself is, how do I even get a point of view? Like, what point of view should I take to even begin this exploration? I could take the natural science point of view, which is nervous system and what's happening in the brain. I recognize I could take a view in me try to predict the way I think most people use the word belief. Um, I could take, a complete solipsist point of view that, well, nothing else exists, so it's whatever I want and be arbitrary. And, for me, it came down to a utilitarian decision in the sense that I could say to myself, well, what's most useful here? And for me, I think whenever I try to understand these ideas, I always think it's most useful to think about it from my subjective experience, because my subjective experience is what causes me, in a way, to get mad at people, to get frustrated, to have certain values that create my life in a certain way. So whenever I think about these ideas, when I have a difficult time thinking about what worldview and what point of view, what orientation I'm going to take, my default is, what is my subjective experience telling me? So that's why I thought it was important for me to communicate and convey, the orientation I'm using and why I'm using that orientation. So what it means to use that orientation for me is to, it kind of sounds kind of crazy maybe, but I actually just I close my eyes and I try to go through. It's one of the ways I do it. I go through kind of step by step in a very, very detailed, slow way, asking myself, when am I experiencing when I say I believe in God? What am I experiencing when I look at a picture on my wall? What am I experiencing when I have a belief that, or something that I would state as a belief? And so I kind of go through this, and it takes hours and hours, and I really think about it, and I go down certain paths of reasoning, and that course of reasoning breaks down, it stops making sense, so then I adopt something else. So I did that with belief. And one of the things that I really wanted to try to explain that I thought was very important was the main concern I had with your argument, which is clearly for me, I say, my experience of believing in God is definitely very different than the expectation I have that when I turn the wheel right, the car goes right. So in whatever,
How?
huh?
Different how?
Well, it's they're different. That I experience them differently.
How?
Well, it would kind of be like saying, what do you mean by how?
Okay, so you're not going to answer it then.
No, I can answer it. I want to make sure I answer it correctly. What do you mean by how? You just want me to answer it?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a couple of very, for me, important differences between the expectation that when I turn the wheel right, the car goes right, and me saying I believe in God. When I
Wait. Uh,
when I say,
wait.
go ahead.
Okay, expectation and belief, I believe, are the same. Go
Ah, I use that word to highlight the idea that I do not believe they're the same. That's why I chose the word expectation.
Okay,
I don't
if
go ahead.
I expect that such and such is going to happen, I believe that such and such is going to happen.
Yeah, that's I would say in my opinion, I wouldn't necessarily use that word.
Why?
Because to say I believe, when I say I believe in something, and I recognize that um, I can use the word I believe like truth, like I believe this is so, and it's my opinion. Or I can use the word I believe to communicate a degree of uncertainty that I have. So what I'm trying to do when I use the word expectation, I'm communicating the idea that in the moment when I turn the wheel and the car goes right, there is zero ability for me to doubt that when I turn the wheel right, the car's going to go right.
Well,
That's what makes it different.
let me present something here. Let's change it from a car to a bicycle.
Okay.
So you have learned that when you turn uh, the handles counterclockwise, the bicycle will turn to the left. You've learned that very well.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is your expectation or belief. That is your expectation or belief. That's what you expect is going to happen. That is what you believe is going to happen.
I think
Now,
that
now wait. Now, what they have done is fixed a bicycle so that the opposite occurs.
Mhm.
So that when you turn counterclockwise, the bicycle turns to the right.
Right.
People have all sorts of difficulty learning to ride the other way
Yeah.
because they have a strong expectation or belief that the bicycle will behave normally.
No.
But,
See,
but on the other hand,
yeah.
after a while, they can learn that this bicycle, when you turn the steering wheel to counterclockwise, that it turns right. They develop the belief or expectation when riding this bicycle.
I
Uh,
got it.
so you're shaking your head.
I
Okay.
disagree.
Okay.
Firstly, the outcome of a belief or even an expectation does not happens after in time, literally. It happens after what I'm experiencing.
That's right. It's called prediction.
That has nothing to do at all with how I am experiencing that moment.
It is your belief as to what is going.
No, it is not. No, it is not.
Can I say
You only recognize that it's a belief. I can show you why it's not, because you only recognize that it's a belief after the fact.
no? I was trying. Well, I've lost it now. But I think there is a significant problem here that you believe that there is a difference between a belief and an expectation.
Whether or not those words, I'm using the right words to convey the idea, I think I'm comfortable with those words. I could see most people, I think maybe most people, I mean, another word I could use is no, but I know I recognize that you have a concern with that.
How are you using it? What would you want to define it as?
What I'm trying to convey is what an important quality, an important criteria, an important attribute of a belief, of the belief, of to believe, is opinion, is doubt, is the ability for you to say upon analysis, it's not even upon analysis, it's for you to even to consider, to analyze the idea that you state you believe in. That is an important attribute of when we say, I have a belief, the belief, or I believe in. You have the ability to consider and analyze and think about what you're stating you believe in.
Well, I don't see any problem with that. I mean, that's a separate issue.
Wait, but I'm claiming.
Can I finish? That's a separate issue.
I
The
know.
openness of mind, the openness of the ability, or the ability to be open to the idea that one could be inaccurate or incorrect with regard to one's belief.
Now, I didn't say you could be accurate or inaccurate. I said you can consider. It's possible for you to consider it. I didn't say to admit that you could be wrong. I said you could consider it. You could think about it. You can analyze it. I'm trying to denote that there's a difference between that and what happens when I'm driving and I turn the wheel and the car goes right. In that moment, I cannot, unless I willfully stop and form, some kind of and consciously kind of intend to think about what's happening mechanically in the car or anything else. I cannot I cannot assess. I cannot think about. It's not even I choose. It's not that I choose not to. I can't. That's an important qualitative difference between something that is what I claim to be an expectation and a belief.
If I expect that it's going to rain tomorrow, it's a belief that I have, but I know that it can be wrong.
Correct. And I'm trying to find. I was trying to find the right word to denote this concept. The original idea that I came to.
Yes, what you're going back to that has to do with the solipsism issue is the question of certainty.
That's not what I believe that I'm struggling with.
Okay.
I'm struggling with my lack. I think that I'm struggling with my lack of vocabulary. I do not know a word. I do not know of a word. I'm pretty sure there's a word in philosophy that conveys this idea. I'm just not aware of it. I'm pretty sure that there is a word out there that means that you do something automatically without the ability to consider it or think about it or choose to doubt it. I thought of the word unconscious, but I didn't like that, because all that, when you say something's unconscious, you're just choosing. It doesn't have to do it has to, when you say something's unconscious, the something doesn't change. It's just where it is. It's either in consciousness or outside of consciousness. And I don't think that's conveying what I'm trying to convey. The idea that I'm trying to convey is the same idea. It's the same reason why. Remember when you asked me, does my wife exist when I'm not thinking about her? And I said, that doesn't make any sense to me. I can't think about whether my wife exists when I'm not thinking about her. This is the same idea. And I can't find a word for it. But do you understand what I mean?
Well, I think I have kind of an idea, but I do not agree with it. But on the other hand, it is very difficult to follow you in that you have somewhat, I think, atypical use of words. And well, I know that you speak at great length, and it does not come together in a way that um, is clear in my mind.
I imagine, and I believe that the sticking point you're having is me supporting my claim that a belief, the belief, or to believe in something is different than belief.
Okay, let's stay with that.
Let's stay with that.
So we have a phenomenon and we have different ways of referring to it. If I believe that it is going to rain, that's believe. I have the belief that it is going to rain.
Right.
To me, those mean exactly the same thing.
Yes.
What it has to do with is that a different word is used because of different sentence structure.
Yes, I would agree. I characterize both those statements as identical. To believe, the belief, a belief, I believe. I just thought of something, but yeah, they are identical. But I claim there's that, and then there is belief itself. You could think of this analogy. It might be easier. I'm going to make it an analogy between thought. There's thinking,
Yeah, I understand that.
right, and then there's a thought. I can explain pretty well, I believe, I think adequately, what a thought is. Thinking is much more difficult. When you say to believe, a belief, I believe,
Is thinking the having of thoughts?
I recognize that could be possible. Yes, it is possible that thinking could refer to having thoughts.
Well,
But I don't agree with that, and let me explain. I thought of a scenario where that didn't ring true to me.
okay.
Okay, so when I am doing when I'm solving an integral equation in calculus, I think it's pretty clear. I would describe myself as thinking and thinking hard, but I'm not having thoughts when I'm doing that.
Well, I would say that you're having thoughts about the equations and the variables and the rules that they go by.
That's not what it seems like to me. And when I say thoughts,
What would be
close,
an example of a
yeah.
thought?
So when I say I'm having a thought, what I'm referring to that would be self-talk. Do you want me to go into what that means, self-talk?
I guess you should, but I think I know what you mean. Much of our mental activity is it is the is talking inside one's head, so to speak, is um, not hearing or speaking out loud sentences, but the having of sentences go through one's mind.
Correct.
Yeah.
The way that I like to explain to give people the experience of it is I tell them, sing the song Happy Birthday in your head without saying it.
Mhm,
That's kind of like, I would say that's a thought.
mhm.
Now, I contrast that with thinking and say, well, that is not happening to me when I am solving a calculus equation.
I think it is. But you're using the language of mathematics.
Or that is not happening to me when I was thinking about what I was going to say to you today about beliefs, or when I think about if I love my wife, or when I think about if I love my parents, let's just say. I don't have thoughts, I don't self-talk about that. It's something that I can do, for example, while I'm driving and listening to rain, doing other things. They're not thoughts in my head. It's something else. And that is what I would contrast to be, that's thinking.
Well,
Thinking,
are you talking about imagination, for instance, within your mind, picturing the person and experiencing certain feelings?
I think that could happen
Mhm.
while I'm thinking about my wife, or whether I'm thinking about how big the universe is, or whether I'm thinking about um, what my car's made out of or something. I could use my imagination, but I don't necessarily have to. That thinking is, this is why I would say thinking is qualia.
See that right there. Um, I could imagine thinking is one of the qualia or is a few of the qualia.
That's correct. That's what I meant. It is not qualia. Yes, that's what I meant. Thinking is part of qualia. It's a member of qualia.
A kind of qualia.
A kind of qualia. Right.
Okay.
So
Now, qualia just means what you're experiencing, right?
it's yes, that's correct. Now I think, when it comes to thinking and beliefs, I would not, it doesn't seem to me, I don't know about how it is for you, but when I have a thought, I can say pretty confidently to you that I'm experiencing a thought. It's like, it's part of my subjective experience. I'm just not saying it. Thinking, it would be difficult for me to say that I experience thinking. It seems to me that thinking
Then it's not a qualia.
yeah, I think it's hard. I'm clear on this. It almost seems to me that thinking is more is part of qualia itself, whereas a thought. I'm going out there. I might be speaking poetry now, but whereas a thought could be thought of as an instance of qualia. The qualia itself is something. What is qualia made of? I'd say qualia is made of thinking. It would be the idea of, feelings is the same way. If I say I'm angry, you could say, well, I'm experiencing anger. But if you say, what are feelings? That's kind of, I can have feelings about things. I think I haven't really explored this idea much, but I could have feelings about things that are not anger, fear, happiness, or something. Anyway, these are analogous. This is what was happening to me when I was thinking about what belief is. What I came to the conclusion was, at the end of the day, that in the same way a thought is an instance of thinking, a belief in, the belief in, to believe in, I believe in, may be an instance of something that is part of qualia, which is belief. You
I thought
cannot
you were
help.
going to say believing.
Huh?
I thought you were going to say believing.
Well,
That's
believing would be similar to
thought.
believe and the belief.
A thought is an instance of thinking. A belief is an instance of believing.
Well, that's interesting. What has me, that could possibly be true. I think given this structure, I'd say I believe in. But that is the course of reasoning that I've used to try to figure out what the heck I mean when I say belief, and what I mean when I say believe. And to help us understand each other, when I say, or when I hear you say, I have a belief, the belief, to believe, that is a purely what you would consider to be, and you would say it, I think, as a conscious phenomenon that I
No,
can consider.
no.
Oh, right. Well, yes. In fact, you say the exact opposite. That's true. That's what I would say. So I would say that's a purely conscious phenomenon. And the important difference between that and turning the wheel and having an expectation is that you can consider it, think about it, communicate it. As I'm talking to you about this now, there is one thing that truly denotes the two differences there. And it just goes into a priori again. I don't know if I want to open up this can of worms again. When I say a belief, to believe, the belief, I believe, or believing, there's an I, there's a subject and an object. There's somebody who's doing the believing. There is someone that has the belief. There's someone that does the believe. It's to believe, I believe, a belief, the belief. That is one of the things that's absent, I think, and now I'm going really out there, when you consider what belief itself is. I don't know if that's truly experienced as if there's an I that can experience belief. I think that the I clearly is required. What?
Don't people say, I have the belief that such and such?
Yeah, the belief. That's what I'm saying. Words, to believe, the belief, a belief, I am believing in, believe in. It all denotes that there's an I doing it. Belief itself is much more complicated. So at the end of the day, it got so difficult. I said I can't understand what belief is other than to say it's part of qualia. In the same way, I can't really explain what thinking is. I can't really explain what sensation is. It simply is part of qualia. So I kind of gave up on it. But anyway, that's what I would state. So is that clearer for you now? A little bit? Even though I'm sure you disagree, is it clearer?
There's something that is not clear in my mind, and it is a basic difference that you are maintaining that you have in your worldview that I don't think you have in actuality in the living of your life, but that you have constructed, built up, and it with input from various philosophical positions and so on. That means that you can't join in and just use words like other people do. You can,
right? I can
pretend like everything is okay, but if you get into a meeting with Bill, then the truth comes out, so to speak.
Well, yeah.
I would say that there is something non-optimal about your way of thinking that causes very complicated presentations of disagreement. And what I wonder, of course, is whether, I think that we as a species that not just we as a species, but this is true of animals in general, we tend to become oppositional to anything that seems like the act of oppression or dominance, the act of dominance. And so we have a very strong tendency to disagree when we can. It is a way of asserting ourselves as not being submissive. And I've written about this, on the website and everything. But that gets into the why something might be happening. And it doesn't mean that that is the reason.
Yeah.
It's just a suggestion, but I can pretty much say that if I start talking, you will start shaking your head.
I just want to, yeah, I mean, I have talked about this before with you. I really, really have trouble, and I've recognized before, I become oppositional when you make statements that is reflective of the way things are with 8 billion other people on the planet. I will become oppositional with that, and I get very, very caught up in that. I don't have an issue. It's not because I agree with you. It probably has more to do with things I've experienced in my family, in my past, of people who have done that overconfidence in belief is something that is rampant in my family. And these people who I believe, are overconfident in their beliefs often use their overconfidence as a way to establish dominance over other people. And that is something that's a trigger for me. When I hear somebody do that, I'm no longer arguing about the validity of your argument and your presentation. I am being oppositional against the fact what I'm experiencing is an inappropriate behavior, which is characterizing an opinion as having an overconfidence in and recognize that something is just your opinion, and instead the opinion is being stated as, well, this is the way things are. I definitely become oppositional with that. That is, and I've recognized that in the past before.
Yeah, well, it would be hard to distinguish, I guess, or it would be hard to come to a conclusion as to whether I was being overly confident and had a closed mind. When I talk about the usual way that people use words, of course, I'm speaking very loosely there. In the first place, many people do not speak the English language. So I'm really only talking about English-speaking people using the word belief and believe and so on. And then, although I realize that people might not, the rat in the maze, people might be much less inclined to say that the rat believes that food is to the right, and more inclined to say that the rat has been conditioned to turn right or conditioned to expect food on the right. But of course, expect is what I mean by belief. But all I'm saying is that if I were to say the rat believes that food is to the right, everybody would know, everybody in quotes, would know what I was talking about. I think there would be very few people who would not know. They might not use those words to describe it.
Yes, I agree. That's really different. I mean, you have stated several times, that's the way people use the word. that's what I get oppositional with. I agree. I don't have an issue with you stating when you say I believe most people would understand me. I would agree with that. I have an issue when you made the statements. I become literally I become oppositional with those kinds of statements. That when you say this is the way people use the word.
Well, the reason that I say that is I do not think it's appropriate to make real atypical use of words, generally speaking. Now, there is a way in which I run into lots of problem doing that one specific thing, but I have special reasons for it. And what that is referring to Humanianity as being religion, because people make the assumption that religion has to do with belief in God. But I believe that that's not a most optimal definition of religion. And religion is defined in a number of different ways. There's no general agreement. So I'm picking one way, and it has to do with, working together within a culture on how to be a good person, what to believe, what to feel, what to think, what to do, how to treat your fellow person, and so forth and so on.
Right.
So at any rate, I do run into problems like that. I have gotten kicked out of groups because of indicating an acceptance of religion in groups that are specifically quote, anti-religious, even though they may not. Some groups are very clear that they are against religion. Others don't have an overt statement to that effect, but it is an expectation that that to be a member of the group, one needs to be anti-religion, and that and people have said that I was, not doing the right thing by saying that Humanianity has anything to do with religion. But the problem is I can't go along with that without feeling that I'm being dishonest.
I understand.
Mhm.
Yeah. I don't have any concern when if you kind of say, let me say that I don't have a concern when you don't make statements that the way what's going on with the rat and what's going on with the 8 billion other people on the planet. I don't think it's necessary for you to at least I don't think to do something or engage in an activity that you don't agree with or don't believe in. I guess what I'm saying is that if you're going to make statements like that to characterize what I believe to be an opinion as fact, I would really, I need you to provide some kind of convincing something, either an argument or evidence. Yeah, I mean, if someone just states,
and I do that on the website. I'm very careful to do that.
well, I guess think with me. I mean, I have not yet heard you within the context of belief and our conversations about that. I have not heard convincing arguments or evidence to substantiate your belief that you know the way, you know what's happening in the rat's brain, and you know what's happening in what the 8 billion other people really mean and what words they use.
I
And
don't, I
I do
don't,
become oppositional.
I don't follow that. I can't understand that.
Well,
I don't know what's going on in the rat's brain.
well, when you say, that's the impression I get. The impression I get is when you say that's the way people use the word, to me, there's an implication that within the context of belief, you somehow can predict accurately what people mean and why they use the words that they do in this way.
Not exactly that. All I'm saying is that for me to say that the rat believes that food is to the right in the maze, I don't believe anybody is going to have trouble understanding that. They might not make the same statement. They might use different words. The rat has been conditioned to turn right in the maze or something like that. We're talking about a particular thing that's happening in the brain of that rat, such that its behavior becomes different. And that what I'm saying is that that can be connected to what happens in the changes in our brains that indeed influence our behavior.
But even in that, what I'm hearing you say is that, well, people might use a different word, but they still mean what I mean. There's still this idea that, which is again, which I become oppositional against, that you know, in this case, it's even more egregious. It's you know what people mean, even if they use a different word, they still mean what you postulate they mean.
That's not what exactly what I said. Um, I said that people, I believe, would understand what I was saying if I said because food has always been to the right in the maze, the rat has come to expect it. It has the belief that food is to the right in the maze, and so on. I think that that is something that most anybody would understand, even though they might not use those words.
It's that next part. Even
What,
though they may not use those words.
right.
So I guess, well, let me ask you then.
Uh-huh.
So does that mean, what I think, what I hear that to mean is people can use different words than you're using, but they really still mean what you mean. So you're setting up a situation where it is impossible for things to be different than what your opinion of them is.
Well, they might not, they might have a different idea. I don't know. I guess somebody could believe that God has instructed the rat to turn to the right or something, but I just don't know what it would be.
Well, I think that if that's the case, then it seems to be in the statement that um, people would understand what I mean, even if they use different words, is not completely accurate, because people might use different words and not mean what you mean.
Well, I understand that that could happen, but what I'm saying is that I have that belief. Uh, I could be wrong, but I do think that there would be a subset of people, probably small, uh, who would react to my saying that the rat had the belief that food was to the right, because they would say, well, rats don't have beliefs, or something like that, because they think only humans have beliefs. And but I think that what we humans call beliefs occurs with other animals,
Mhm.
except for the modeling of those beliefs in the form of sentences using our symbolic language.
Yeah, I I I could understand that, and I think that when anybody, this is not just you, when anybody introduces an idea that or when they make a statement that they are simply using language that everyone else uses, and that they somehow know the way everyone else uses language, um, that sets up a big problem in my mind. That I think is obvious. Um, the person is clearly, my belief is, mischaracterizing an opinion as what we would consider to be maybe part of reality behind the curtain.
Well, that curtain thing, that's a specific metaphor that exists in one place in the Mind Body Problem book that nobody who
All right.
has not read the book would know anything about.
Okay, so let me state it differently. When somebody says that they know the way people use language, it creates a big problem, because what they're saying is they know the way things are outside of their subjective experience, and that's a huge problem for me.
Well, that's the word know, K-N-O-W, the problem there. When people use the word know, they are referring to belief, but they are referring to belief that they assume is so, is accurate, and that as far as they know, other people, the majority of other people would agree with them, except that that's not correct. What I said is not correct there, in that there are other uses of the word know.
Well,
Um,
I think you use the word accuracy is better, so let me say it again. So when people, I won't use the word no, when people make a statement that um, they are completely, when you make the statement that's the way people use the word, or that's the way people use language, you are having you are you are you have you're characterizing your opinion and a belief, in my opinion, as something other than just your opinion.
well,
You're characterizing it as the way it is.
let me say that whatever I say is my opinion, and of course I have feelings of varying degrees of confidence in my opinion or belief. But when I make a statement um, under normal or usual circumstances, I'm stating my belief. Um, the I can alter that by the context or by nonverbal behavior, like Harris Teeter is around the corner.
Yeah, I
See,
say
that would be different than Harris Teeter is around the corner. So the sentence is the same, but the meaning is different because the context.
I
And,
could be wrong about what I'm experiencing.
and Harris Teeter around is around the corner can be preceded by, I believe that Harris Teeter is around the corner, or I believe that it is not so that Harris Teeter is around the corner.
See, I see what you're saying. This is this is an example of something that reflects my idea of what belief is. But what I sense of what's going on, and maybe I could be wrong, is in hindsight, when you look back at your behavior, you are acknowledging that it's just a belief, or that it's not just, that it is a belief and you could be wrong. But that is not what I am experiencing. And again, I could be wrong about this. In the moment when you make the statement, that's the way people use language, I don't hear any doubt. I don't hear you could be wrong. I don't hear any acknowledgement or any admission that this is your opinion, even upon, you know, strong expression of concern, even upon, you know, even upon extreme critique of what you're saying. I still don't, I never hear that. And that's what that's what I become oppositional against.
Yeah, well, I try to clarify in the first place that I'm talking about English speaking people, and that I am, that it is it's my belief that people would understand that way of saying something, namely the rat believes that food is to the right, that they would understand that a particular individual, I agree, might strongly disagree with that because they might, in their word usage, consider that belief has to be something that is put into words and therefore can only be done by humans, or that belief can only exist in animals that have souls and only the human has a soul, or whatever. So I understand that uh, that I can't make a universal um, absolute statement with absolute confidence that, oh, this is right without exception and so on. That was not my intention.
Okay.
I'm just saying that all I'm saying is that when I say that the rat has the belief that food is to the right in the maze, that that's not inconsistent with what I believe belief to be, and also it is not an egregious misuse of a word, such that people would think, well, that's obviously wrong.
I would agree, and that is something that does not, that is something, what you just said, it's not something I feel I can't accept. The things that I can't accept, like I said, is when I get the sense that in the moment and upon analysis and critique, when I get the impression that you really do believe that you know the way people use words and what's going on in the rat's mind, that's again when I become oppositional.
Yeah, well, no, I don't feel highly confident about my ability in general. There are some things that it's very difficult for me to have any degree of doubt about, but that doesn't mean that I can't be wrong.
Okay, so if you believe in hindsight that it doesn't mean you can't be wrong, it's difficult for me to understand how, at least what I can see, when you consider your definition of belief, it seems to be based on a on the idea of the way most people use language. But I'm hearing you say just now, you made the admission that there are people that do not use language the same way you do, and you're only speaking about a very small percentage of the population, English-speaking people. On that basis, that seems to be an inappropriate orientation to understanding and doing analysis of what beliefs are. It's such a small percentage of humans throughout history have spoken English.
But that's not what I'm saying.
Oh, maybe I don't understand.
In the first place, I'm trying to clarify. I'm trying to do what I would call clarifying some things about who we are and how we function, because I believe in the importance of self-understanding, of understanding in general. I believe the more we have accurate beliefs, the more we can avoid causing pain, suffering, disability, and early death. So, so I am trying to call attention to this very basic process that occurs in us animals. And that is a change in our nervous system that reflects something about the world as experienced, as the animal has experienced it. So I think it's important to well, to try to have that understanding, and in conveying it, I'm trying to avoid words that don't have meaning for most people, like qualia and so on. I try to make whatever I say as understandable as possible to other people, and to not introduce words that have significant ambiguity without clarifying how I'm using the word so that the ambiguity is reduced.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do try to get across some ideas to the world.
Of course, yeah.
That other people do not necessarily agree with. In fact, the whole humanity concept, I think, even maybe has some negative qualities to it in the minds of many people. The idea that we could be much better than we are through self-understanding and working together to come to agreement on our basic ethical philosophy. People don't like that idea because that's feels like thought control or something. And I don't agree with anybody. That would be submitting,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
sort of thing.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think this is another area where I think our ideas overlap somewhat, but not completely. I believe that it is more often, I should say, I believe it is appropriate at times to not use the common use of language, because language, I believe, is reflective of an idea. And when you use a certain word that reflects an idea that I believe is inaccurate, it's inappropriate for me to continue to use that word, because I'm actually, I don't want, I think what needs to be changed is someone needs that I or other people would, the most beneficial thing for humanity is for them to reconsider what these words mean. So I would actually want people to reconsider what the definition of belief is, what the definition of to believe means, rather than to continue to use the same word. So I think the way we're hoping to help people is we both want to help people, but it's different. I think you want to use language in a way that people can understand and present new ideas that way. I want to present new ideas by encouraging people to reconsider what they believe these words to mean, the ideas behind these words.
Well, I'm not opposed to that. I think in ways I do that.
Oh yeah, I would agree. Yeah,
good example being, I believe that people, in general, the majority of people use the word religion in a very non-optimal way to mean something that it does not really mean, in that if we take a look at all of the things that we currently and in the past have called religion, they are not belief in God. They are much more working together on what we should think, feel, and do, anything that we have voluntary control over, in order to become good and happy people. So, and I'm not alone in that, but that's not a majority use of the word religion.
Yeah. When you think, I'm curious, so what I'm hearing you say is that one of the reasons why you like to use words as people commonly use them is to facilitate an understanding in what you're saying.
Yes.
So yeah, I would find it difficult, since words are reflective of ideas. It would be difficult for me to present a different idea it would be difficult for me to present an idea that is different than a common person might believe in, by using words that are commonly used the way they're commonly used. I would find I wouldn't know how to do that.
Well, I attempt that on the Humanianity.com website, especially on in the home section, the detailed intro section. So it takes a look at all of the words that are used and really clarifies each of them as to how it's being used on the website.
Right.
Recognize that there are various ways that any words can be used.
That's what I'm doing. So that's a good analogy. So I'm basically doing the same thing. When you say to me, well, that's not how, the way you're using the word, Mike, is not the way most people are using it, I would agree with that. But that's the same thing as having these definitions of exactly what I mean when I use these words on the website. In a sense, it's an attempt for me to have people consider what the idea that a word is reflective of, whether it's belief or knowing or reality or truth, whatever it is. So if for that reason, if I'm trying to convey a different idea than I believe is commonly used when we say truth, I really don't want to use. I do want to use words differently than they are commonly used. I need to define them. So I really don't. For me, I don't have a concern when we do that. I almost feel it's necessary. It's almost the point. I wish I had, there are people out there that can, come up with these great new words for things. I can't do that. I don't have, I guess, a good enough understanding of Greek or something, these root words and what they mean, and to form different words to mean something. So I'm kind of forced to kind of redefine what the words that I know of mean.
Well, when one does, though, comes up with a new word, then there's always a period of time that it takes for more and more people to understand what it means. And sometimes that doesn't take place, but it takes place a lot, in common lingo. New words appear,
That's true.
and words change their meaning, like gay used to mean joyful, and then it became something else, and so on. So so there's a learning process that is a gradual, kind of disorganized kind of thing that doesn't it's disorganized and just moves kind of like weather patterns or something, except in the area of technical fields where a word is specifically defined as having a particular meaning. And then, of course, that word can be used outside of that technical area. That happens all the time. And the best
Right.
example of that is energy. Because when people say, oh, I have lots of energy today, they mean something entirely different than what the quantum physicist or the scientist means, or the engineer means.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I think besides, the progress we've made with belief, which I think is, I think I at least have something I feel reasonably confident in, that I can say, this is my opinion about what belief is, and the difference between belief and the belief, and to believe, and a belief, and believing, and I believe. I think we've also talked about the part of your definition of belief that's causing this opposition, which I think would be beneficial. And I hear you saying that that's really not what I believe you mean when you state that's the way people use the word and language. I'm going to endeavor to remember that you seem to be using it a little bit differently. Than that statement is a little different than I believed you meant. That it doesn't necessarily mean that the way people are using words. It's reflective that they would understand you if you
Yes.
use that word. Okay. Well, that's I think important. I have 15% left battery on my computer, and I was hoping to talk to you about something personal at the end of this. I need some advice. Do you have a few minutes?
Yeah, so we'll conclude this discussion and I'll stop.
Well, before you stop recording, I mean, where are we for next time, do you think?
I don't know. Let's next time try to figure that out.
Okay. All right. Very good.
Humanity, now we all can see. Humanity, how much better we can be.